I flew home early to surprise my perfect boyfriend, only to find him at the airport, waiting not for me, but for another woman. That's when I became a ghost, watching my life unravel from across the street and quietly formulating a chilling plan for his. The flight home was supposed to be a surprise, a wonderful, heart-stopping, movie moment kind of surprise. My boyfriend Liam thought I was 3 states away, holding my grandma's hand in a sterile hospital room where I was supposed to be for the rest of the week. He'd been the perfect partner, of course. When I'd called him in a sobbing panic 4 days ago, telling him Grandma had had a fall and it was serious, he was my rock. "Go, baby, of course, you have to go," he'd murmured into the phone, his voice a warm blanket of calm over my frayed nerves. "Don't worry about anything here. Just focus on her. I've got everything handled. I love you so much." For the next 3 days, his texts were a constant stream of support. "How's she doing today? Sending all my love. Just got home from work. The apartment feels so empty without you. Thinking of you. Call me if you need to hear my voice, even if it's 3 a.m. He was, and always had been for the 4 years we'd been together, perfect. The kind of man my friends were openly jealous of, the kind my mom adored, the kind I was planning on marrying. But then a miracle happened. Grandma, who we all thought was on her last legs, suddenly rallied. The doctors were stunned. By yesterday afternoon, she was sitting up in bed, demanding daytime television and complaining about the hospital food. My mom, laughing with relief, told me to go home. "She's going to be fine, honey," she'd said, shooing me away. "Go back to Liam. We've got this." So I booked the first flight I could get for the next morning. The idea of the surprise started as a little spark and quickly grew into a bonfire of excitement. I imagined myself, luggage in hand, quietly unlocking the door to our apartment. I'd find him on the couch, probably watching some boring documentary, and his head would snap up. The confusion on his face would melt into pure, unadulterated joy. He'd rush over, lift me up, and spin me around, burying his face in my neck, telling me how much he'd missed me. The thought made me giddy for the entire 3-hour flight. I practically bounced off the plane and through the terminal, my small rolling suitcase clicking cheerfully behind me on the polished floor. I was headed for the rideshare pickup area, phone in hand, ready to call an Uber, when I decided against it. No, a taxi would be better, quicker. I didn't want anything to delay the moment. I cut through the main arrivals hall, a bustling river of reunions and farewells. People were hugging, crying, holding up signs with names scrawled in marker. And that's when I saw him. My heart did a funny little flip-flop. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, that I was just seeing him everywhere because I missed him so much. But no, it was definitely Liam. He was standing near the bottom of the escalators that led down from baggage claim, unmistakable in his favorite gray hoodie and worn-in jeans. He was rocking back and forth on his heels, a nervous, excited energy radiating from him. My first thought was pure, blissful shock. He was here to surprise me. But how could he possibly know? I hadn't told a soul. Maybe my mom had called him? It seemed unlikely, but it was the only explanation. A huge, goofy grin spread across my face. I was about to call out his name, to run and launch myself into his arms, but something stopped me. He wasn't looking around randomly, scanning the crowd. His eyes were fixed, with laser-like focus, on the arrivals board. He was tracking a specific flight. I ducked behind a large concrete pillar. My curiosity piqued. This was even better than my own surprise. I'd let his play out. I watched as he pulled out his phone, a wide, genuine smile on his face as he typed something. It wasn't his usual smile. It was brighter somehow, more eager. He looked up at the board again. Flight 714 from Paris. Landed. A little furrow appeared in my brow. Paris? We didn't know anyone in Paris. His company didn't have an office there. His family was all in Oregon. The current of people flowing from the international arrivals gate thickened, and Liam stood on his toes, craning his neck. My silly grin had vanished, replaced by a knot of confusion in my stomach. This felt strange. wrong. I told myself I was being ridiculous. It was probably a work colleague or an old college friend he'd never mentioned. Liam was a private person. There were perfectly logical explanations. Then I saw her. She emerged from the crowd like she was walking out of a movie scene. She was tall, with a cascade of blonde hair that fell perfectly over the shoulders of a stylish trench coat. She had that effortless, chic look that I always tried and failed to emulate. She pulled a single, expensive-looking suitcase behind her, and her eyes scanned the crowd for a moment before they locked onto Liam. The change in him was instantaneous. His entire body lit up. His posture shifted from anxious waiting to pure, unbridled delight. And the smile he gave her. God, that smile. It shattered my world before she even took a single step toward him. It was a smile I recognized. It was the smile he reserved only for me, the one he gave me in the morning when he first woke up, the one that said, "You are my entire world." He was giving my smile to a stranger. She practically flew into his arms, and he caught her, lifting her slightly off the ground. He buried his face in her blonde hair, his hands clutching the back of her coat. It wasn't a friendly hug. It wasn't a welcome back pal hug. It was an "I've been starving for you" hug. My own hands flew to my mouth, a choked sob catching in my throat. I was frozen, hidden behind the pillar, a ghost at my own funeral. They finally pulled apart and he cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs stroking her cheeks. He said something I couldn't hear, and she laughed, a bright tinkling sound that scraped against my raw nerves. Then, right there in the middle of the crowded airport, he leaned in and kissed her, a deep, passionate, lingering kiss that spoke of familiarity and longing. My legs gave out, and I slid down the pillar to the cold, hard floor, my suitcase tipping over beside me with a soft thud. Through the blur of my tears, I watched as he pulled away from her, still smiling that devastating smile. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his keys. He fumbled with the ring for a second before sliding one off. He pressed it into her palm. It wasn't the car key. It wasn't the key to his office. It was the key to our apartment, attached to the ridiculous little avocado keychain I'd bought him for our second anniversary. The one with the two halves that were supposed to fit together. "Welcome home," he mouthed to her, and she squeezed the key in her hand, her eyes shining with love. My phone screen was dark, but in its black reflection, I could see the distorted image of them walking away. His arm was slung possessively around her shoulders, her head resting against his chest as they moved towards the parking garage, towards his car, towards our home. The avocado keychain, a stupid, whimsical symbol of our shared life, was now the instrument of my own destruction. The world around me was a cacophony of garbled noise gate announcements, rolling suitcases, crying children. But in my head, there was only a high-pitched, deafening silence. The cold of the terrazzo floor seeped through my jeans, a chilling numbness that was spreading rapidly through my veins. For a moment, I honestly thought I might die right there, my heart just giving up and stopping its frantic, painful thumping against my ribs. How long I sat there crumpled and broken behind that pillar, I don't know. It could have been seconds or an eternity. What finally broke the spell was a security guard's voice, gentle but firm. "Miss? Are you all right, miss?" I looked up, my eyes struggling to focus on his face. He looked concerned. I must have been a sight-pale, tear-streaked, clutching my chest like I'd been shot. I couldn't speak. I just shook my head, a pathetic, jerky motion. I needed to move. I couldn't stay here. What if they'd forgotten something? What if they came back? The thought was a surge of pure adrenaline. Using the pillar for support, I scrambled to my feet, my legs shaking like a newborn foal's. I grabbed the handle of my suitcase and fled, not even looking where I was going, just putting distance between myself and the scene of the crime. I ended up in a deserted corridor near the airport hotel, my back pressed against the cool wall, my lungs heaving as if I'd run a marathon. The sobs I'd been holding back finally exploded out of me, raw and guttural sounds of absolute agony. every lie he'd ever told me played on a loop in my head, now cast in a sinister new light. His loving texts from the past few days weren't a comfort. They were a calculated deception. The apartment feels so empty without you. Of course it did. He needed it empty for her, for his real life to begin. Don't worry about anything here. I've got everything handled. Oh, he'd handled it all right. He'd used my family's trauma, my grief over my grandmother's potential death, as the perfect cover story. He wasn't just a cheater, he was a monster, a cold, cruel puppeteer who had played me for a fool. The grief was a tidal wave, but underneath it, something else was beginning to stir. A flicker of rage, cold, hard, and sharp as a shard of glass. How dare he? How dare he bring another woman into our home? The home I'd decorated, the sheets I'd bought, the kitchen where I cooked his favorite meals, the bed. Oh God, the bed. A fresh wave of nausea washed over me. Were they there right now? Was she in my shower using my shampoo? Was he making her coffee in my favorite mug? The thought was so visceral, so violating, that it pushed the tears away and replaced them with a chilling clarity. I couldn't go there. I couldn't confront them. Not like this. Showing up, a hysterical, crying mess, would only give them power. They'd paint me as the crazy, unhinged ex-girlfriend. He would twist it, lie his way out of it, just as he had clearly been lying for God knows how long. No. I had one advantage, and one advantage only. He thought I was 400 miles away. He thought he had until the end of the week. He thought he was safe. My mind started racing, piecing together a new, terrible kind of plan. I needed to see. I needed to know everything. Who was she? How long had this been going on? Was this some fleeting affair, or was I the affair and she was his real life? The questions burned in my gut. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. I ignored the texts from my mom asking if I'd landed safely. I couldn't talk to her. I couldn't talk to anyone. This was a private hell, and I was going to have to navigate it alone. I opened up a browser, my fingers fumbling on the keys. I scrolled through hotel booking sites, but none of them felt right. They were too anonymous, too transient. Then an idea struck me, a memory from a few months ago. My friend Sarah had been complaining about her cousin, who was renovating his apartment and needed a short-term rental nearby. He'd found a place in the building directly opposite ours, a new high-rise with glass balconies and floor-to-ceiling windows, a building with a perfect unobstructed view directly into our living room and bedroom. My heart started to pound again, but this time it wasn't with pain. It was with a dark, predatory purpose. I found the short-term rental site Sarah's cousin had used. I typed in the address of the building, my breath held tight in my chest. There were 3 listings. One was a studio facing the wrong way. The second was a 2-bedroom already booked. But the third was a 1-bedroom on the 9th floor. Our apartment was on the 8th. It would be an almost eye-level view. The listing photos showed the exact angle I needed. The living room balcony in the picture looked directly across the narrow street at a building I knew with intimate, soul-crushing certainty. I could almost make out the blue pot on our own balcony where my sad-looking basil plant was probably dying. It was available. Available starting today. Without a second of hesitation, my mind a blank slate of pure, cold resolve. I tapped, "Book now." The confirmation email chimed in my inbox a moment later. My surprise was ruined. My life was in ruins. But his was about to be. He thought I was away. He thought he was bringing his other woman into a safe house. He had no idea I was about to move in right across the street, turning our home into a fishbowl. He had no idea I was about to become his personal ghost, watching his every move. The ride to the new apartment building was a blur. I sat in the back of the taxi, my face pressed against the cool glass, watching the familiar city streets slide by like scenes from someone else's life. Every couple I saw holding hands sent a fresh stab of pain through my chest. The check-in process was entirely automated. A code sent to my phone gave me access to the building and the key fob waiting in a lockbox on the apartment door. There was no human interaction, which was a blessing. I don't think I could have formed a coherent sentence. The apartment itself was sterile and impersonal, furnished with the kind of bland, inoffensive decor that screams corporate rental. A gray sofa, a glass coffee table, a generic piece of art on the wall depicting a blurred cityscape. It smelled of cleaning products and nothing else, but I didn't care about any of that. I dropped my suitcase by the door and walked, almost in a trance, straight to the floor-to-ceiling window that made up the far wall of the living room. And there it was, our life, framed like a macabre work of art. Apartment 8B, my home. It was so close I felt like I could reach out and touch it. The lights were on. The big, comfortable armchair where I always curled up to read was visible, its worn floral pattern a painful reminder of quieter, happier times. The gallery wall I'd spent a weekend painstakingly arranging was there, our smiling faces in silver frames glinting under the recessed lighting. My stomach clenched. I could see movement inside, shadows passing back and forth behind the semi-sheer curtains. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I needed a better view. My hands, still trembling, fumbled in my purse for the one thing I had bought on a whim at an airport shop years ago and never used. A compact pair of binoculars. I'd bought them for a hiking trip that never happened. Now they felt like an instrument of fate. I raised them to my eyes, my breath catching in my throat as the blurry image swam into sharp focus. The first thing I saw was her. She was wearing one of Liam's t-shirts, a faded gray one with the logo of his favorite band on it. My t-shirt, really. I'd bought it for him. It was hanging loosely off her frame, making her look small and delicate as she padded barefoot across our hardwood floor. Her blonde hair was tied up in a messy bun, and she was holding 2 mugs of what I assumed was tea or coffee. She was laughing, her head thrown back as she walked towards the living room, and then he came into view, following her. He wasn't wearing a shirt. His hair was damp, like he'd just gotten out of the shower. My shower. He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her back against his bare chest. He kissed the side of her neck, and I saw her sigh and lean into him, her eyes closing in contentment. I felt a guttural, animalistic sound rip from my throat, a noise of such pure anguish that it startled me. I clapped a hand over my mouth, my knuckles white. I had to be quiet. I was a ghost, a phantom. Ghosts don't make noise. I watched them for what felt like hours. They settled on our sofa, the one we'd picked out together after arguing for weeks over fabric swatches. They curled up, her legs thrown over his lap, their bodies intertwined, with an ease and familiarity that spoke of years, not days or weeks. This wasn't new. This wasn't a fling. This was a life. A whole other life he had been living behind my back. They talked. They laughed. They watched something on the television. At one point, he got up and went to the kitchen. I tracked him with the binoculars. He opened the fridge and pulled out the leftover lasagna I had made before I left. The lasagna I'd specifically made so he'd have easy meals while I was gone, taking care of my family. He spooned 2 large portions onto our wedding registry plates, heated them in the microwave, and brought them back to the living room. He fed her a bite from his fork, and she smiled at him with so much adoration it made me physically ill. I had to look away, stumbling back from the window and collapsing onto the cold, soulless, gray sofa. The rage was a physical thing now, a burning acid in my veins. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a complete and utter erasure of me. He had literally replaced me in my own life with my own food on my own couch, and she had slipped into my place as if it had been tailor-made for her. Darkness fell outside, and the lights in his apartment cast a warm, inviting glow that felt like a personal insult. I stayed on the sofa, a statue of misery, unable to eat or sleep. My phone buzzed incessantly, texts from my mom, my friends, and then, inevitably, from Liam. "Hey, baby, just checking in. Hope Grandma is doing okay. Missing you like crazy over here. The bed feels huge without you. Love you." The hypocrisy was so staggering, so audacious, that I almost laughed. I wanted to text back, "Who's in it with you now?" But I held back. My plan, fragile as it was, depended on my silence, my invisibility. The final text from him came around 10 p.m. Heading to bed, exhausted. Talk to you tomorrow. Sweet dreams, my love. My love. The words were ashes in my mouth. I forced myself back to the window, drawn by a morbid need to see the final act of the day's betrayal. The living room light went out. A few minutes later, the light in our bedroom flicked on. The one room I couldn't see clearly from this angle. The window was smaller and the curtains were heavier, but they weren't fully drawn. There was a sliver of a gap. I raised the binoculars, my heart pounding a funeral drum against my ribs. I could see a slice of the room, a corner of the bed with my blue comforter, a piece of the wall where our favorite photo hung, a candid shot of us laughing on a beach vacation. Then, two silhouettes passed in front of the sliver of light, moving towards the bed, his and hers. The light clicked off, plunging the room and my world into absolute darkness. I stood there, staring at the black rectangle of their window, my mind numb. Then, through the silent night air, I heard something, faint but unmistakable. The sound of her laughter carrying across the small distance from their open window to mine. The sound of her laughter was the final twist of the knife. I stood at the window for another hour, long after the sound had faded, staring into the blackness of their bedroom window as if I could burn a hole through it with the sheer force of my hatred. Sleep was a country I couldn't find the passport for. I spent the night pacing the sterile apartment, a caged animal fueled by a toxic cocktail of grief, adrenaline, and rage. Every creak of the strange building, every distant siren sent a jolt through my system. In the early hours of the morning, just as the sky began to bleed from black to a bruised purple, a chilling thought wormed its way into my mind. Who was she? In the airport, she had looked expensive, European. Her name was a blank, a void I needed to fill. Liam was meticulous, almost paranoid about his privacy online. His social media was locked down tighter than Fort Knox, but hers might not be. I just needed a name. My mind raced back to the airport. He was tracking a flight, Flight 714 from Paris, an international flight. That meant there would be a passenger manifest. Not that I could access that, but it sparked an idea. People get excited about travel. They post about it. I pulled out my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I searched Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, hashtags, Sur Flight 742, Chambre Paris, CDG, ORD. I scrolled through an endless feed of blurry airplane wing photos, generic pictures of the Eiffel Tower, and boomerang videos of champagne glasses. It was hopeless. Then I remembered Liam's face as he waited, the eager, almost desperate way he was scanning the crowd. He knew what she looked like. They had to have been in contact. My eyes darted to my own phone, still buzzing intermittently with unread messages. His phone. If I could see his phone, I would have all the answers. But his phone was over there, in that bedroom, probably on the nightstand, right next to my side of the bed. The thought of it, of him lying next to her, made me want to throw my laptop against the wall. I forced myself to calm down, think. How had they communicated? He was too smart for obvious texts. There had to be an app, a hidden conversation. I went back to Liam's social media, looking at his lockdown profiles with new, suspicious eyes. His friends list was small, curated. Family, a few close college buddies, co-workers from his engineering firm. Nothing. Then I looked at his tagged photos, mostly pictures from years ago, family events, holidays with me. But there was one, from about 6 months back, posted by one of his co-workers, Mark. It was a group photo from a work conference in Chicago. Liam was in the back, smiling his usual charming smile, but he wasn't looking at the camera. His gaze was angled slightly to the side, and there was a subtle softness in his eyes. I followed his line of sight. Standing a few people away was a group from a different company, a European firm that was a partner on their latest project. And in that group, unmistakable even in the slightly blurry photo, was her, the blonde. Her hair was down, and she was wearing a professional but stylish blazer. She was looking back at him, a small, secret smile playing on her lips. It was a blink and you'll miss it moment, a private conversation in a crowded room. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a recent development. This had been going on for at least 6 months. The conference, that was it. He'd been so excited about it, so focused on work. He'd called me every night telling me how much he missed me. Lies. All of it. A meticulously crafted performance. I clicked on Mark's profile, then on the photo to see the tags. I hovered my mouse over her face. A small white box appeared. Chloe Dubois. I had a name. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Chloe Dubois. Her Instagram was public. My breath hitched. The profile picture was of her, smiling radiantly, the Eiffel Tower sparkling behind her. Her bio was simple. Architect, Paris, Chicago, making life beautiful. Paris to Chicago. My eyes scanned her grid. It was a curated collection of beautiful things. Architectural drawings, artistic shots of Parisian streets, photos of elegant dinners and glasses of wine. And then I saw it. A post from 4 days ago, the day I'd flown out to see my grandmother. It was a picture of a packed suitcase, a passport, and a plane ticket peeking out. The caption read, "The wait is finally over. See you soon, my love." The comments were all from friends in French, wishing her a safe flight. One comment from an account I recognized as belonging to another one of the architects from the conference photo said, "So excited for you. Liam is a lucky man." So they all knew. His colleagues, her friends. Everyone knew but me. I was the fool. The clueless girlfriend holding his life together back home while he built a new one on another continent. I felt a dizzying wave of vertigo, as if the floor had dropped out from under me. I scrolled further back, my morbid curiosity a runaway train. There were subtle clues everywhere, breadcrumbs I never would have noticed before. A photo of a bouquet of peonies, my favorite flower, the ones Liam always bought for me with the caption, "He remembers." A picture of a sunset with the caption, "Counting down the days until this is our view every night." It was all there. A whole relationship, hidden in plain sight. Then I saw a photo from 2 months ago. It was a selfie of her, holding up a key. A single, shiny, newly cut key. It wasn't the one he'd given her at the airport. This one was different. The caption read, "The next chapter. Can't believe we have our own little place in Paris." We? Our? My mind reeled. They had an apartment together, in Paris. This wasn't him cheating on me with her. This was them, a long-established couple, and I was... what? The convenient stateside girlfriend? The placeholder? The one who paid half the rent and took care of the apartment he used as his bachelor pad whenever his real partner was out of the country. The lie was so enormous, so all-encompassing, it almost didn't seem real. He hadn't just built a second life. He had a whole second home, a whole second continent. My quiet, predictable, loving boyfriend was a stranger, a con artist of the highest order. I leaned my head against the cold glass of the window, the digital glow of her perfect life burning my retinas. The sun was fully up now, casting a bright, cheerful light on the building opposite. The building where he was sleeping, probably with his arm around her. He thought I was 400 miles away, grieving. He had no idea I had just uncovered his entire secret world, and he had no idea what I was about to do with that knowledge. The next 2 days were a masterclass in self-control. I existed on black coffee and the cold, hard fury that had become my only fuel. I watched them. I documented everything. Through the lenses of my binoculars, I became the silent, omniscient narrator of their cozy little domestic play. I watched him make her breakfast, flipping pancakes in the kitchen just like he did for me on Sunday mornings. I watched her rearrange the throw pillows on his couch, her hands moving with an air of ownership that made my blood boil. I took pictures. I took videos. I recorded him leaving for work in the morning, kissing her goodbye at the door with a lingering tenderness that was a physical blow each time. Then I'd watch her. She'd do yoga in the living room, her graceful form a stark contrast to my own coiled, tense posture. She'd take video calls in French, laughing and gesturing animatedly. She was building a life in my home, completely oblivious to the ghost across the street. The most surreal moment came when my mom called. I answered, forcing my voice into a semblance of normalcy, telling her grandma was still improving and that I'd be home at the end of the week as planned. While I was on the phone, assuring my mother that Liam was being so supportive, I was watching him and Chloe through my binoculars as they shared a bottle of wine on the balcony, their heads close together, whispering and laughing in the afternoon sun. The sheer audacity of his deception was breathtaking. He thought he had until Sunday. That was his timeline, his safety net. So I decided my timeline would be Saturday. I spent Friday making my preparations. I called my best friend, Sarah, the one whose cousin had inadvertently provided me with my sniper's nest. I told her a carefully edited version of the truth, that I'd found out Liam was cheating and I was leaving him. Her response was immediate and fierce. "What do you need? A U-Haul? An alibi? Just say the word." Her loyalty was a small, warm pinprick of light in my vast, cold darkness. We made a plan. She and two of her biggest, most intimidating guy friends would arrive at noon on Saturday. Not before. The final piece of my plan involved Liam's pride and joy, his meticulously curated collection of vintage vinyl records. It was his baby, worth thousands of dollars and countless hours of hunting through dusty record stores. He loved those records more than anything, or so I had thought. Saturday morning, I watched them leave the apartment together around 10 a.m., hand in hand, dressed for a day out. My moment had come. I waited a full 30 minutes, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, before I left my rental and crossed the street. My own key, the one that hadn't been a prop in a grand romantic gesture at the airport, slid into the lock of apartment 8B. The door swung open, and the smell of them hit me. Her perfume, a light floral scent, mingled with the familiar smell of his cologne. It was a violation. The apartment was pristine, cleaner than I'd left it. A woman's touch. A vase of fresh peonies sat on the coffee table, my favorite flower. I wanted to smash it, but I had a job to do. I worked with methodical, chilling efficiency. I packed my clothes, my books, my toiletries. I stripped the bed of the sheets she had slept on and stuffed them in a trash bag. I went through the apartment room by room, plucking every trace of myself from the life we had built. My toothbrush, the photos of us from the gallery wall, the silly souvenirs from our trips. I was erasing myself, just as he had tried to erase me. Then I turned to his things. I found a stack of mail on the kitchen counter. Tucked in the middle was a letter from a Parisian real estate agency, addressed to both Liam and Chloe Dubois. The final damning proof. I pocketed it. Finally, I went to the living room and stood before the custom-built shelves that housed his precious record collection. I didn't smash them. That would be too quick, too merciful. Instead, I carefully slid each record out of its sleeve. I took the vinyl itself, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, David Bowie, all his irreplaceable first pressings, and I laid them on the floor. Then I took the empty cardboard sleeves and carefully, precisely, put them all back on the shelf. They looked perfect, untouched, an illusion of wholeness just like our entire relationship had been. At exactly 11:55 a.m., I sent him a single text message. It was a screenshot from Chloe's Instagram, the picture of her key to their Paris apartment. I added no words. Let him wonder how I found it. A minute later, my phone rang. His name flashed on the screen. I ignored it. It rang again and again. Then a frantic text came through. Where are you? What is that? We need to talk. Then another. Baby, please answer me. It's not what it looks like. I almost laughed. It was exactly what it looked like. As I stood there watching his desperate messages pour in, the doorbell rang. It was Sarah and her friends. They were my cavalry. They worked quickly, moving my boxes and bags out of the apartment with a grim efficiency. As they were carrying the last load out, I heard the elevator ding at the end of the hall. Liam. He must have broken land speed records getting back here. I met him at the doorway. He skidded to a halt, his face pale, his eyes wide with panic. Chloe was a few steps behind him, a confused and worried look on her face. "What's going on?" he breathed, his eyes darting from my face to the empty space on the gallery wall behind me. "Baby, what is all this?" "Don't call me that," I said, my voice eerily calm. I had rehearsed this moment 100 times in my head. I held up the letter from the real estate agency. "I believe this is yours. Well, yours and Chloe's." I handed it to her. She took it, her brow furrowed, and her eyes scanned the paper. I saw the moment she understood. Her gaze flickered from the letter to Liam, to me, dawning horror spreading across her features. "You told me you were divorced," she whispered, her voice trembling. Liam's head whipped around to look at her, his composure finally cracking. "Chloe, just wait a second." "Oh, that's a new one," I said with a cold, brittle laugh. "He told me my grandmother was dying. You got the better lie, I'll give him that." I stepped out of the apartment, pulling the door closed behind me until it clicked. I faced him in the hallway, the last of my boxes at my feet. "Everything of mine is gone," I said, my voice as steady as steel. "The rent is paid through the end of the month. After that, it's all yours, both of you." "Wait, please," he begged, his hands reaching for me. "We can talk about this. I can explain." "Explain what, Liam?" I asked, looking him dead in the eye. "Explain the months of lies? The apartment in Paris? Explain how you used my family's crisis as your romantic getaway? There's nothing to explain. There's just the truth." I looked past him, at Chloe, who was now staring at him with a look of utter betrayal. "He's all yours," I said to her. Then I turned back to Liam. "Oh, and one more thing. When you have a moment, you should really check on your record collection. You wouldn't want anything to happen to it." A flicker of pure terror crossed his face. He knew. He knew what that meant. Without another word, I turned, walked to the elevator with Sarah and my things, and pressed the down button, never once looking back.